James never thought much of his older brother, Jesus, beyond the ordinary sibling relationship they shared. In their small home in Nazareth, life was simple but demanding. James grew up watching Jesus work alongside their father, Joseph, in the carpentry shop. Jesus was a good brother, kind, patient, and wise beyond his years. But to James, he was just Jesus, the eldest of the family, someone who helped guide their younger siblings and took care of things when Joseph passed away. The family often gathered at the end of the day to share meals. Jesus would sometimes speak about God in ways that made James stop and think, but mostly James didn't dwell on it. He was more concerned with the daily grind of making a living and helping their mother, Mary. Everything began to change when Jesus left home. News started trickling back to Nazareth that Jesus was traveling from town to town, preaching, healing the sick, and even performing miracles. Crowds followed him everywhere, claiming he was the Messiah. James couldn't believe it. His brother, the Messiah, sounded absurd. James had grown up with him, seen him scrape his knees as a child, watched him learn the trade. How could someone so ordinary now claim to be sent by God? One day, the entire family decided to confront Jesus. They had heard rumors that he wasn't even eating because of the crowds and that some people thought he was out of his mind. James led the way, determined to bring his brother back home before things got worse. They found him surrounded by people, teaching about God's kingdom. When someone told Jesus his family was outside waiting for him, he responded with something that stung James deeply. "Who are my mother and my brothers? Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." James stood there stunned. Was Jesus rejecting them? He couldn't make sense of it. As the weeks and months passed, James grew more frustrated. He heard the Pharisees call Jesus a blasphemer. The family became the subject of gossip in Nazareth. James felt the weight of shame and confusion. Why couldn't Jesus just return to being the quiet carpenter they all knew? Even when the festivals came, and people flocked to Jerusalem, James remained skeptical. During one such feast, he sarcastically said to Jesus, "If you really want to be known, go show yourself to the world." He didn't believe for a second that Jesus' mission was real. To him, it seemed like arrogance or worse, delusion. Then came the news that Jesus had been arrested. James was shocked but not entirely surprised. He feared that this might happen with all the controversy surrounding him. But nothing could have prepared James for what happened next. The trial, the mocking, and finally, the brutal execution on a Roman cross. James stood at a distance as Jesus hung there, his body battered and broken. The crowds that had once cheered for him now jeered. A part of James felt anger at Jesus for putting himself in this position and at the people who had turned against him. But another part of him felt something else, regret. What if Jesus had been telling the truth all along? What if he had been wrong to doubt? After Jesus died, James withdrew into himself. The days that followed were dark and heavy. He avoided the disciples, avoided the city streets, avoided the questions swirling in his own heart. But then something extraordinary happened. It was early morning when James heard a knock at the door. One of Jesus' followers stood there, breathless and wide-eyed. "He's alive," the man said. "Jesus is alive." James dismissed it at first. Grief could make people imagine things. But the reports kept coming. People claimed to have seen him alive, walking, speaking. Then it happened. James was alone in a quiet room when Jesus appeared before him. "James," Jesus said, his voice warm and steady. James froze. He couldn't believe his eyes. His brother stood there, alive, his hands and feet bearing the scars of the cross. Tears streamed down James' face as he fell to his knees. "You are who you said you were," James whispered, trembling. "Forgive me for doubting." Jesus reached out and lifted James to his feet. "I love you, James," he said, "and I have a purpose for you." From that moment on, James was a changed man. He became one of the most devoted followers of Jesus, dedicating his life to spreading the gospel. In Jerusalem, James emerged as a leader among the early believers. He was known for his wisdom, earning the respect of both Jews and Gentiles. People sought his counsel, and he became a peacemaker, guiding the church through its growing pains. James also wrote a letter to encourage believers scattered across the Roman Empire. In it, he shared practical advice and a deep faith forged in the fires of doubt and transformation. He wrote, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." James' unwavering commitment to Jesus eventually cost him his life. The religious leaders in Jerusalem, threatened by his influence, condemned him for his faith. He was thrown from the temple pinnacle, and when he survived the fall, he was beaten to death. Even in his final moments, James prayed for his executioners, echoing the love and forgiveness of his brother, Jesus. James, the once skeptical brother of Jesus, became a cornerstone of the early church, a man of deep prayer, unshakable faith, and profound humility. His story reminds us that doubt can be a stepping stone to belief, and even those closest to Jesus can struggle to understand him. But when the truth is revealed, it changes everything. James' journey from doubt to faith continues to inspire believers, showing that no matter how far we stray, there is always a path back to God's grace.